harder you try to prove yourself, the weaker you appear. Toxic people and narcissists thrive on your reactions, feeding off your anger and frustration. But what if real revenge is not retaliation at all? Today, you'll see Stoic truth and daily lessons that reveal how discipline, silence, and wisdom outsmart them without a word. The first truth you must face is this: the more you strike back, the weaker you appear. Revenge through reaction feels powerful in the moment, but it exposes a hidden dependence. You let the one who harmed you dictate the rhythm of your emotions. Most people don't want to admit this because it challenges the story we like to tell ourselves. We believe that shouting back, exposing lies, or proving a point restores dignity. But in reality, it ties you to the very person you want to escape. They insult you, and you argue. They betray you, and you rage. And in every response, you confirm that they still hold a piece of you. That is why silence is such a brutal paradox. To the outside world, it looks like weakness. But in practice, silence can be the sharpest form of revenge. Think about the last time someone disrespected you publicly. Maybe it was a colleague undermining you in front of others, or a toxic partner belittling you just to watch your reaction. In that instant, you had a choice: prove them wrong, or let the silence speak for itself. If you spoke, perhaps you felt strong for a moment, but later, you realized you gave them exactly what they wanted, evidence that they still mattered to you. But if you stayed silent, if you refused to play the game, something unsettling happened on their side. Their ego, which feeds on reaction, starved. Their power collapsed, not because you shouted them down, but because you denied them the one thing they needed most: your attention. Silence terrifies ego because it reflects back a truth toxic people can't bear. They are not as important as they believe. When you do not argue, when you do not defend, when you do not retaliate, you turn the spotlight inward. They are forced to face their own emptiness without the distraction of your energy. That is why your silence lingers long after your words would have been forgotten. It isn't absence, it's presence in a higher form. The presence of self-control. And self-control, in the Stoic sense, is the ultimate weapon. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." By holding your silence, you step out of their chaos. You prove that their insults cannot bend you, and their betrayal cannot define you. If you find value here, subscribe. It's a small click for you, but it helps us share more timeless Stoic wisdom and how it transforms revenge into strength with the world. But let me ask you directly, which do you think is harder? A, staying silent when insulted, or B, controlling your emotions after betrayal? Share your answer in the comments, because both demand a kind of discipline that few are willing to practice, yet both are essential if you want to master the Stoic art of revenge. Silence as revenge doesn't mean you ignore everything. It means you choose to rise above. You are no longer proving your worth through conflict, but demonstrating your strength through restraint. And this isn't passivity, it is active mastery. When you can resist the urge to argue, when you can resist the temptation to prove, when you can resist the pull to lash out, you claim the higher ground. You are no longer playing by their rules. You are living by your own. And in that space, you are free. Most people will continue believing that the loudest reaction wins. They will exhaust themselves trying to show their enemies they cannot be broken, not realizing that the need to prove is already proof of weakness. but you know better now. You understand that silence, when chosen with wisdom, does more damage than anger ever could. It breaks the cycle by refusing to participate in it. And yet, there's a principle Marcus Aurelius lived by that shows why silence can defeat even the most toxic enemies. The harder you chase revenge, the more you remain chained to the one who wronged you. That is the paradox most people never see. Every moment you spend plotting their downfall is a moment they still occupy your mind. And in Stoic terms, that means they continue to own you. The truth is uncomfortable, but simple. Obsession with payback is just another form of slavery. When you lash out in anger, when you replay the betrayal in your head, when you waste hours imagining how to hurt them back, you are still serving their ego, not your freedom. Revenge, in the ordinary sense, always costs more than it pays. Exploding in anger drains your energy. Obsessing over getting even wastes your time. Stoicism reveals a deeper insight. The more you retaliate, the more you give away the one thing you can never reclaim: your inner discipline. This is why Seneca wrote that delay is the remedy for anger. When you delay, you allow reason to rise above impulse. And in that delay, you often realize that your enemy has already defeated themselves. Think of the countless examples around you. A colleague insults you in front of others. The impulse is to argue back, to restore your pride. But the moment you do, you hand them control of your emotions. You are no longer choosing your words. You are reacting to theirs. Or imagine the betrayal of a friend. You feel the fire to expose them, to retaliate with equal cruelty. But even if you succeed, what have you gained? You look in the mirror and see yourself becoming the very thing you despise. That is the trap. Retaliation disguises itself as power, but in reality, it is dependence. Discipline is the true revenge, because it shifts the battleground from their world to yours. Instead of plotting how to tear them down, you invest in building yourself up. You double down on your habits, sharpen your mind, strengthen your character. When someone expected to see you broken, and instead they watch you rise with more clarity and more resolve, that is punishment they cannot escape. Their memory of what they tried to do will haunt them more than any words you could say. And you walk away, not only intact, but stronger. Discipline is also the clearest signal to yourself that you are free. You are no longer ruled by the highs and lows of other people's approval. You are no longer dependent on their recognition. The greatest insult to those who try to harm you is to live so well that they no longer matter. And that can only be achieved through disciplined focus. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that other people's actions were beyond his control, but his response was always his choice. Revenge that comes through discipline is permanent because it does not depend on their recognition. It depends only on your mastery. So the next time you feel the fire of betrayal, ask yourself, is this worth my energy, or is my energy better spent on becoming stronger? If you know someone who needs this message, share this video with them. You might help them see how Stoicism turns revenge into lasting strength. As you begin to understand this, you will see why discipline is not only a shield, but a sword. The enemy expects you to fight on their terms, but discipline moves the fight into a place they cannot reach. And the most striking insight lies ahead, a Stoic principle that shows how silence, not retaliation, can unravel even the most toxic enemy's power, leaving them defeated by their own ego. The harder you try to fight toxic people on their terms, the more you lose. That's the paradox no one wants to accept. You may think that clever comebacks, louder arguments, or plotting your retaliation proves your strength. But each time you step into their arena, you play by their rules. And in that moment, you are not defeating them. You are feeding them. Their ego grows, their control tightens, and you mistake your reaction for victory. The truth is that retaliation is not revenge. Retaliation is submission disguised as power. Toxic people, especially narcissists, survive on your attention. Anger, begging, explanations. These are all forms of currency they use to keep themselves relevant in your life. The false belief is that silence equals weakness, that restraint means surrender. But this illusion falls apart the moment you realize silence doesn't weaken you. It weakens them. You outsmart toxic people, not by striking back, but by refusing to provide the one resource they cannot live without, your energy. Epictetus once wrote that if someone provokes you, remember that it is your opinion of the insult that harms you, not the insult itself. This is more than philosophy. It is strategy. Outsmarting toxic people means withdrawing the supply of validation they desperately seek. When they insult you and you do not defend. When they betray you and you do not collapse. When they return with apologies and you calmly test actions instead of clinging to words, you have already won. Because the game they set up requires your reaction. When you refuse to play, the game ends. You know this truth already. Think of how many times you've seen a narcissist escalate when ignored. They grow louder, they press harder, they switch from charm to cruelty. Why? Because your silence terrifies them more than your anger. Anger proves they still matter. Silence proves they never did. Outsmarting them is not about beating them in debate or exposing them in front of others. It's about calmly closing the door and letting their own ego turn against itself. But this takes discipline, because your instinct is always to defend yourself. Your pride wants to explain. Your ego wants to prove. And here's the intellectual pain you must face. The more you defend, the less free you are. Each explanation, each reaction, each argument keeps you bound to their narrative. Outsmarting toxic people is about refusing to let them write your story. It is about living in such a way that their attempts to control you are irrelevant. You hold your ground, not by aggression, but by mastery. This is why Stoicism is so powerful in dealing with toxic people. It gives you a different measure of revenge. Not, did I prove them wrong? But did I remain unshaken? Outsmarting them is about shifting the definition of victory. Victory is not them admitting defeat. Victory is you living in peace while their manipulations collapse. That is how you turn their attacks into evidence of your strength. If this lesson resonates with you, like this video and subscribe for more Stoic lessons on how silence and self-discipline can defeat toxic people. And think about this. Every time a toxic person strikes, you are presented with a choice. You can react and remain in their cycle, or you can rise and turn the attack into fuel for growth. The next principle we explore will show how setting boundaries rooted in quiet confidence transforms every attempt to break you into another reminder of your power. The illusion of revenge is that you must wait for the perfect moment to strike back. But the longer you wait, the more power you hand to toxic people. They thrive on delay, on hesitation, on your silence that is not rooted in strength, but in fear of conflict. The paradox is this: waiting feels like control, but in truth, it often gives them more control over you. Think about how often you've been caught in this trap. Someone insults you, and instead of practicing stoic silence, you replay the insult in your mind, crafting the perfect comeback you will never deliver. Or a toxic partner betrays you, and you tell yourself you'll respond when the timing is right, but the waiting only deepens their hold. Each moment of hesitation is a subtle concession. By not setting the boundary in the moment, you allow their actions to dictate your state of mind long after the event has passed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Boundaries are how you put that truth into practice. When you enforce them calmly and immediately, you reclaim the space of your mind. Boundaries are not loud speeches or grand confrontations. They are clear lines of self-respect, refusing to answer manipulative messages, saying no without apology, ending conversations that serve only chaos. These acts may seem small, but they form the architecture of your freedom. Consider the cost of failing to act. A toxic colleague pushes past your limits in meetings. You let it slide once, thinking it is not worth the trouble. But the pattern repeats, and soon, your silence becomes permission. Or a manipulative friend returns after betrayal, offering apologies without change. You hesitate, unsure whether to forgive or hold your ground. That hesitation becomes an opening, and before long, you are drawn back into the very cycle you wanted to escape. The lesson is sharp. What you allow once, you teach others to expect again. Boundaries, as quiet confidence, are not about punishing others. They are about protecting yourself. They reveal who respects you and who only seeks to consume your energy. When you hold to them consistently, you discover something important. People who value you will accept them, and people who don't will expose themselves by resisting. Both outcomes serve your growth. But here is the warning you cannot ignore. If you keep delaying, toxic people won't just test your limits, they will control your life. Every moment you avoid drawing a line is a moment you place your peace in someone else's hands. Revenge, in the Stoic sense, is not about waiting for the right strike. It is about refusing to play the wrong game. And yet, the Stoics remind us that the strongest revenge is not won in the heat of the moment, but in the preparation beforehand. The discipline you build, the habits you strengthen, and the wisdom you practice all decide the outcome long before the battle begins. That is where the final lesson leads us, redefining revenge not as retaliation, but as mastery. The hardest truth to accept is that the final victory is not found in humiliating your enemy. It is not in crafting the perfect words that cut them down, or in proving to others that you were right. The ultimate revenge, in the Stoic sense, is showing yourself that they no longer control your mind, your choices, or your peace. Retaliation may feel powerful for a moment, but mastery makes that power permanent. Think about how often you are tempted to respond to an insult. A toxic person makes a comment designed to draw you out, and immediately your mind begins to build a defense. You want to explain, to correct, to put them in their place. But as soon as you engage, they have succeeded. They have dictated not only the subject of your thoughts, but the tone of your emotions. Stoic mastery asks you to see that the insult itself is powerless. It has no meaning until you give it meaning. When you choose silence, you do more than withhold a response. You claim mastery over yourself, and that is the one victory no enemy can take away. Consider another scenario. Someone who once betrayed you tries to come back. offering attention, apologies, or even affection. The temptation is to measure your worth by their return, to imagine that their presence somehow proves your value. But if you accept them, only to fall into the same cycle of chaos, you have not won anything. Mastery is the decision to withdraw your attention, to set boundaries, and to honor yourself enough to stay firm. The real punishment for them is not your anger, but your indifference. The real victory for you is not keeping them, but proving you never needed them in the first place. Stoic revenge is discipline in action. It is choosing dignity over retaliation. It is refusing to waste your days plotting how to bring others down when you could be building yourself up. Seneca observed that anger is brief madness, and that is exactly why retaliation is so dangerous. It places you in a state of madness where you surrender clarity, purpose, and freedom. Mastery, on the other hand, is reason held steady under pressure. It allows you to meet insult with calm, betrayal with boundaries, and manipulation with silence. You may worry that mastery looks like weakness, but it is the opposite. Weakness is allowing others to dictate your behavior. Weakness is chasing their validation long after they have shown they cannot honor your worth. Strength is the choice to rise above without needing to prove anything. The true paradox is that the less you try to defeat them, the more defeated they become. Because they can argue with your words, but they cannot argue with your peace. When you live this way, you transform the idea of revenge itself. It is no longer about cycles of harm or about temporary victories that leave you drained. It becomes a lasting state of freedom, a reminder that no one can harm you unless you grant them the power. That is the highest form of revenge, and it is won not through retaliation, but through mastery. In just one sentence, share the Stoic habit that helps you rise above toxic people. The heart of this message is that revenge, in the Stoic sense, is never about striking back, but about proving to yourself that toxic people cannot control your mind. Retaliation feels powerful in the moment, but it ties you to the very person you want to be free from. Mastery, on the other hand, is silent strength, choosing self-control, dignity, and discipline so that your enemy no longer dictates your emotions or actions. This mastery is not abstract. It is lived in the smallest choices of daily life. When you stay silent in the face of insults, you practice restraint that unsettles the ego of others. When you withhold your attention from narcissists, you deny them the supply they depend on. When you choose dignity instead of reaction, you protect your peace and grow stronger. These are not grand gestures of revenge, but subtle habits of mastery that turn every attack into an opportunity to build your character. The paradox of revenge is that the less you try to prove yourself, the more powerful you become. The louder you argue, the more you expose weakness. The calmer you remain, the more you demonstrate strength. This is the path of Stoic wisdom, where victory is not found in humiliating your enemy, but in showing that you are unshaken by them. So the real question for you is this: what does victory mean in your life? Silence or retaliation? Share your perspective in the comments and reflect on how these principles apply to your own struggles. And if you want to keep building this strength each week, subscribe to discover timeless Stoic principles and learn how to apply them in your daily life.